In the instructions, there are a few options mentioned how to finish off the edges of your fabric. And one of those mentioned options is a bias tape finish. I think this is a really beautiful way to create a really nice and neat inside of your garment without showing overlocker seams. I think this is especially for jackets and coats and blazers, a really nice way to finish. I prepared my own bias tape from Roll by using a Liberty Tarnalon. This is an especially thin and fine fabric that is, in my opinion, perfectly suited for doing some bias tape. And with this sewing pattern, it's important that you take notice that you have a seam allowance of 1 centimeter, which means that your bias tape has to be narrower than 1 centimeter. The normally used bias tape is about 1 centimeter, so you probably have to create your own, or you have to look into where to get a narrow one. So my bias tape, when it's finished, it's cut from 3 centimeter wide stripes, is 0.7 centimeters wide. The Tarnalon gives a really beautiful and nice finish. It does not add on at all because it's so thin. So this is something that is important when you think about what fabric to use to create bias tape. Do you want it to be more sturdy, or do you want it to keep the flowy consistency of your fabric that you have? When working with bias tape, I think it's important to also take notice that it's important that you sew the bias tape on the right side of your fabric. There are different ways to finish with bias tape. I will show you a way how to do it in a quick way, with just one seam and with a really neat finish on the right side of your fabric. The wrong side is pressed away so you won't see it. So if it's a little bit wobbly on the back side of your bias tape, it's not something to worry about because it won't be noticed. Before you start, make sure that your machine is on the right setting. So we use the normal straight stitch and we move the needle to the right side or to the left side, depending on if you're a left or a right-hander. And what's also important is I always use a narrow edge stitch fit. This is so helpful when you sew bias tape because you just have the same amount of distance to the edge. As I said, I created, well, it's not me who created it, but the way I sew bias tape for the inside of garments is a quick way. I use it not as I would do like having a blanket with bias tape or something. There I would be more neat so that I can make sure that it's equal on both sides. But if it's just important to have it really nice on one side, it's fair enough to simply already press the bias tape in half so that the open edges are in the middle inside, and you just get your fabric edge into, you just slip it into the bias tape that it's really close to the center fold, and then you just sew. Make sure that you're supporting the bias tape, that it does not fold unequal or something, and that your fabric does not slip away. So this way you have a really nice seam line on the right side, and on the left side it's okay, mostly it looks nice, but if it's a little bit wobbly, it does not hurt anybody. When you want to do the finish with the bias tape, it's important to just remember that whenever you have to assemble 2 pattern pieces or 2 fabric pieces, that you, before you do it, that you do the bias tape already, because as soon as you assemble the pieces and they're sewn together, it's almost impossible to add the bias tape. So you will finish off the edges of your single pieces whenever it says that you're getting close to assembling 2 pieces, and then you're on the safe side. So it will look like this. You will always press apart the seam allowance on the back side, which means that you will always see the right side of your fabric with a bias tape on, and you will have really flat and nice seams then. To show you on the object what I exactly mean is, I already finished off the edges with a bias tape on the back of my ZOE jacket and on the front piece of my ZOE jacket, which means that you lay it right sides facing. So this is the wrong side that you're seeing if you wonder about the slightly wobbly bias tape finish. Then you just put the edges of the bias tape exactly on top of each other, that they align. And you just pin as you would usually do if you finish off with overlocker. It's basically the same procedure as when you finished off with overlocker. And then you will sew. I already prepared it, and press the seam allowance apart on the inside of your garment. So you see, it's a really nice and neat finish. And with the sleeves and the armhole, it's the same. So you finish the edges with the bias tape, then you sew together. And when you're getting to the side seams, there you will finish off. I have to snip this away. You finish off in one procedure the seams of the side seam of the sleeve and the side seam of the back or front piece. So it's one bias tape line. Okay, exactly. When you come to the sleeve facing, you have the option to also finish off with a bias tape, but for this version, I prepared to just fold it in and finish off with a small, with an edge stitch. But it's basically the same. You would just see the bias tape here, but you will also sew with 1 centimeter seam allowance with a bias tape next here. So you won't fold anything under or inside the sleeve facing, but you would see the bias tape finish here.